Hi, it's really a great privilege for me to facilitate this masterclass series from CII for all you entrepreneurs out there. I hope our mutual sharing of experiences, challenges, and information can become a great learning lessons for all of us. Thank you, CII, for giving us this opportunity. Strategic financial management is a subject of vital importance for all businesses, big and small. And therefore, it is necessary for us to look at this a little more closely. While we look at what is strategy by itself, we look at a financial strategy is all about integrating organizational activities and utilizing and allocating the scarce resources within the organization environment so as to meet objectives. So basically, we all know that organizations need to have a gamut of activities. We need to integrate them and make sure that they all move towards one thing, and that is achievement of whatever is our objective. We also have very limited resources with us, whether in terms of raw materials or finances, basically more finances. We need to know where to utilize these finances in such a way and allocate it in such a way that we get the maximum profit and minimum risk, and thereby meet a lot of our objectives. So while we plan how to do this, it is essential that we need to remember that all our decisions have a great financial impact, and there is bound to be reactions from the stakeholders. There are many stakeholders. We ourselves, the entrepreneur, the owners, our competitors, our customers, our employees and suppliers and government. Now, in a world of economic uncertainty, the owners want to maximize their wealth by selecting optimum investment and financial opportunities that gives them maximum expected returns at minimum risk. This is what we all of us want. We want maximum returns with minimum risk, and this in a jargon is called as the risk-return trade-off. How much risk are we willing to undergo in order to get that much return? And in this quest for a risk-return trade-off, and with our challenges and constraints like limited resources, we need to think and analyze where should we allocate these funds, and then develop a realistic plan such that when we execute the plan, we sustain our business, we keep adding value to whatever we are creating, we try and generate as much funds within our system so that we don't need to go out to get more, and also take the best use of the opportunities that the environment throws us and defend ourselves against all the threats that the environment throws at us. So basically, if you look at strategic financial management, it talks about way to do, what is the way to do all these things, right? How do we get into that trade-off? So it's actually a step. The first thing you need to do is do some financial planning, and we will look at it. And the second thing we need to do is gather all the data that is possible and arrange them such a way and use some job aids, tools, etc. and make sure we get and glean out what information that is required that is pertinent to the questions in our mind and to make our decision making much better. The third step is, of course, after laying out the plans, we need to implement it. So how do we take all what we plan and put it into practice? And then once we put it into practice, how do we review it back and look at it for control? So when you take the first step, it is strategic planning. And every one of us who set up an enterprise, and if you remember the first day when you started your business, you would have had a vision in your mind. What do I want to be? So and so on and so forth. And when you look at these visions, you would also be setting objectives and goals and how to achieve what you are setting out. So basically, when you talk about strategic plans, it is laying out a plan that will help you achieve what you have set forth in your mind. So therefore, strategic plan any which ways is futuristic. So thinking what you're going to do in the future with a very strict intent, with what intention are you thinking? That is called as a strategic theme. On a broader basis, your business could be wanting to go for more market development, or would be looking at innovative product developments, or some looking at bigger customers, or expanding your market, or sometimes even contracting your market, or looking at closing down some market area and starting in a newer area. Maybe you're looking to go for overseas. Maybe you're looking for some mergers, acquisitions, or looking for diversifications. So in all these broader vision or mission that you have in your mind, you would be laying out various objectives and goals. So strategic plan is to first look at what is your strategic theme and intent with what you intend to take your company forward. And then once you decide what it is, you have various methods and tools which we'll be looking through during the series, and we will be using a lot of these. We'll be taking and assimilating information from your past, from your present, and making future forecasts with some assumptions based on your past. So we would be looking at information from external sources, whether it's political, economic, or social, or technological, which is in a jargon called pest analysis. And internally, we'll be looking at our cost analysis, we'll be looking at our sales, we'll be looking at our own strengths and weaknesses fitted against the opportunities and threats in the external environment. We'll also be looking at our own core competencies and saying, are we ready for this? And more important, we will be doing a lot of financial analysis and reporting, which we will prepare finally what is the impact of what we have studied or analyzed, and therefore what is the implication on our decision. So unless when we do all these analysis, we should know how will it affect my decision. So that is what we will learn, how to take out this information and apply it on our decision. And then we look at a gap analysis, because ultimately we are all dynamic environments. So the enterprise has to change. So we will also be looking at where are we now, how are we going to be in future, what does it take us, what is the gap from where I am to what I want to be. And looking at this gap, we will try and work out some plans, some tactics, how to go from here to there. And then we will do the implementation, how to go. So whether it is the question of how to raise money, manage your funds, or whether how to make your assets work for you well, whether it's your long-term assets or whether it is your short-term assets, or what do I do for money, how do I distribute my profits, all these important decisions requires a lot of data, and keeping in mind your strategic intent and the goals all within a time frame. Is it long-term, short-term, medium-term? So we will be looking at what are the operational strategies, what are the tactics are short-term plans on how to overcome certain challenges. So once we do all these things, we also need to continuously go back and review. So we will do a continuous monitoring. We will talk about job aids, or some tools which will help you to keep a continuous monitoring of specific performance targets. We can in finance, we have these tools where we can know which are the things to look for, which will then read and say, oh, this is where my sales is not growing at this pace, or my loan interest is has to be paid on this one. So it will raise the correct flags at the right time, and then we can also take corrective steps if we are going away. So therefore, just because we made a plan doesn't mean it has to be fixed. It can be flexible, and these tools are just aids to our decision making. Ultimately, you, the entrepreneur, is the decision maker. But all what we can help you with is giving you a set of tools and ammunitions with which you can work better, faster, and cheaper. And always believe me, one plan isn't enough. You need to have a plan B, plan C. I'm so sure all you guys, if you imagine what you set out to do on day one of when you started your business and what you're doing today, you would be in plan Z plus AAA or whatever. So we are looking at backups because that's ultimately how we protect ourselves. So let us see, during this series I would be covering about 15 topics which to my mind thought would help you, and if you have any other more topic which you would like me to cover, I would be more than happy to help you. Okay. So the first topic is understanding your business model. What is a business model? A business model is a framework on which your business is being built. So understanding how your business is being built. Just like a house, you build a framework and say, this is the blueprint of how I want to build my house. Similarly, you would have had a blueprint and this is how I want to build my business. But today, if you remap after all the renovations that you do on the house and you drop a blueprint of your current house, then you would say, oh, this is really different from what it is. But each time you change your models, it is always in response to the environment. So therefore, we will study what are the elements that go. Is it the value that you're creating? Is it the customers and your market and your profiling of your customers? And looking at the infrastructure, you know, whether on what are your key activities, what are your key processes, what are your key people who are helping you, and you know, what are the resources that you require. All these things we will have a look at. And more important, we will study the cost model and we'll study the revenue model of how your business is getting money in and what are the expenses which is costing you this. And thereby look and study at how is your model economically feasible, or is it giving you the right amount of profits. Now, the second topic we would be covering is in relation, once you understand your business model, it's very important that you understand that all businesses are made up of a bunch of processes. Processes are nothing but small tasks arranged in an order with an input and gives you an output. For example, if you're going to buy a grocery, you take a list and then you do a set of activities and you pay the bill, go to the market, pay the bill and come back, right? Home. Now, this is your grocery buying process. Similarly, any business will have a whole lot of process, whether it's your buying process or your selling process or your administrative process or your inventory control process or your financial process, invoicing process, cash management process, bad debts management process, customer acquisition process, customer retention process, your quality process, name it. All these are a part of your business processes. Now, is it possible for us? Yes. It is possible for us to track each of these processes and study how these processes are flow. So which means we learn how to draw up a flow chart of all our activities and see where is the block, which process is more sleek, which process is lean, which process is actually taking a lot of time. Thereby, you re-engineer the process to make it very sleek and slim, and thereby gain a lot on speed, agility, your cost comes down, your working capital really comes down when you do this of process re-engineering. So we'll be looking at some of that in that class, and then we will look at how to evaluate your revenue models. Now, this is one place that we really need to concentrate as to what are the various streams through which you're getting money. There may be some streams which would be contributing only 20% of your revenue, but would be, taking like 80% of your costs and your time perhaps. So we'll study what are your revenue streams, where and when does your revenue get realized. Okay, look for newer revenues. Is it possible? Yes. And we will see whether some of the old revenue streams are actually drying up and is it time to close it, because quitting at the right time also is a very, very important thing. So we look at that and then we'll go on to understand financial statements. Most of us get the auditors to get us our financial statements. But today in this class, what we will do is we will look and study what is this financial statement, what are the important things we should look for, and how can we learn from this to benefit our decision making, what is the impact of it on our decisions, and how to make use of this information and plan our future. So all these things we'll study in understanding what financial statements are. Then we will understand that what are financial decisions and what are their implications on our business. For example, if you look at any business decision can be put under 3 headings. One is you would always be thinking about your capital investment and how to raise money and how to bring in more money. So all these things are your important funding decisions. Then you will say, okay, once I raise enough of money, I've got these sources, how am I going to use the money? Am I going to use it in long term or am I going to use it in short term? Working capital management. Long term, what are the new machineries I need to do? Any updates on the factory upside, whatever. So you are looking at long term investments and short term investments. And these are very important because you think 100 times before you invest in your long-term investments. And of course, last but not the least, the third most important thing is how do I use the money that I've earned? Okay, so how do I distribute the profits? Is it between my partners? That's enough. Should I retain something for the business itself so that I can plow back so that I don't have to go outside to borrow? So debt, equity, what do I do? How do I distribute my profits? So that all these things we'll be studying. And therefore, when you take this, for example, if you want to go overseas abroad, how would you fund it? Right? If you want to take your market overseas. Now you look at if this is your strategy, then you look at the implication, what more capital structure I need to do, how much more funds I need to bring in, what are the investments I have to make long term and short term, and what do I do with the money that I get, and should I use my retained earnings to fund this opportunity. So like this, we will study what are our financial decisions and their implications. The most important, yes, we have made our plans, we have made what to do, and we now look at, where do we get the money from? What are the various sources? Long-term sources of funding, short-term sources of funding. We look at each of these newer forms of funding, like your crowdfunding or your venture capitalism and angel fundings, and we will look at the pros and cons of each of these sources of raising money. And we look at some of the norms and how they can help you to raise money. Now we will come to the next topic that we would talk about is our working capital management. The day-to-day working of your business requires a certain amount of money. And how do we plan for this? And here we will look at what is your working capital? What is a working capital cycle? There is a fixed number of days in which your entire cycle works. So we will look at all these things and study your liquidity position and how do we raise money to cover our working capital cycle in a go. How many working capital cycles we have. Now based on this, the working capital, we will go to the next subtopic and another class, which is cash flow management. What are cash inflows, cash outflows? How do we capture them? And it's all our, in our minds. If ideally all our inflows and all our outflows match, man, we would be in a very, very happy life. But that's not the case. The reality, the inflows and the outflows mismatch. And therefore, how do we make good this gap between the mismatch between our inflows and outflows? What are the tactics we can use in order to avoid cash crunch and liquidities problems? And this is where we all know that everything in business starts with cash and ends with cash. So this topic would be of very, very importance to all entrepreneurs. And of course, the next important challenge for any entrepreneur is collections. So we will look at, I'm not going to give you a magic formula, guys, but nevertheless, we can look at some tactics on how to look at our credit policy and study our collection patterns and see whether we can find some hidden cash in our credit. I can give you some tools and aids by which you can release some cash which other people are using in their rotation because it's your cash and you're giving the credit. We'll also look at the amount of your cash locked up in terms of inventories and what are the various inventory controls that you can apply in order to release this cash that is locked in terms of inventory. So I will also help you by giving you some tools which you can keep handy in which you can monitor your collections as well as your inventory. But the basics of everything is understanding your costs. All of you guys have your costs in your MOTI. But let us look at cost itself. There are different kinds of costs that play their role and behave in a particular way in your enterprise. Now, many of you guys may not be aware of the intricacies of their behavior. So in this class, I will talk to you about the various kinds of costs that your enterprise may have and how each of them behave, because they all have a definite pattern of behavior. And how can we leverage on this behavior and use it to minimize our costs? And therefore, a cost analysis, how do we do it? All these things will be dealt with in this class. Fine. We all know the costs, but how are we allocating it in our pricing, right? What is our various strategies for pricing? What is the things that we are adopting? What is our method of pricing? How are we allocating the costs? We may be doing more than 2-3 products. How do we allocate the common costs? Are we undercosting it? Are we overcosting? And how do we cost based on activities, importance that and the impact that they have on our organization? So all these things will be dealt with in this class. The cost benefit analysis is a wonderful tool in our hands. This is the only tool that takes into account both implicit and explicit costs as well as benefits. When you talk about explicit, we all know money that goes out of your pocket or comes into your pocket, hard rupaya. But when we talk about implicit, is that those expenses, like the loss of a very good scientist in your organization or a man who knows all the information, a very good knowledge worker loss. Now, how do you put that in terms? These are implicit. So how do we put that in terms of explicit? So those are the things that we will be learning under the cost benefit analysis to aid our decision making much better. And along with that, in the next class, we will go through some more strategic financial tools like balance scorecard, benchmarking, ratio analysis. We do ratio analysis, all of us, but we look at some very good strategic ratios, which when you just put that strategic and you feed it into your Excel or something, you immediately, it will let you know where exactly the problem is. At least it will give you a fair and a rough idea where the problems is. So we'll be looking at various tools and job aids available to help you to make informed decisions with greater financial impact and the optimum risk return trade-off. And since budget is in the air and it's also very important, and we're talking about strategies which is futuristic, and therefore budgets becomes very important. How do you budget? Nothing but putting your plans for future in quantitative terms. So is it possible for us to forecast it in numbers? And looking at what are the ways to do budgeting, what are the various budgeting techniques, and how do we draw up basically, I'm going to talk more only about these two important budgets, your sales budget and your cash budget. And last but not the least, I was thinking that in this era of mergers, acquisitions, and startups and funding and all these things, a basic look at what is valuation. How do you value your organization? You would love to know what the market thinks of you. How does the market value you? So we will look at how to value your company. Now, there are specific professionals, valuers who would value your company for you. But to understand what are the basics that go for the calculation of the value of your company, we will look at some of the fundamental methods by which valuation is made, and we will look at, there are various valuation models. We look at some of the popular 1 or 2 models so that you will be aware how your company is valued and where and when you need and to use these valuations. So with these 15 topics get covered, and we have a lot miles to go before we actually sleep, as the poet puts it. So looking forward to your great cooperation and participation in this online series. Come, let's equip ourselves with some financial tools of trade. I'm ready for questions. Thank you.